Matthew McConaughey, the man who risked everything to become himself. There are some people who seem like they were born to be famous. Matthew McConaughey wasn't one of them. Before the awards, the millions, the red carpets, and that unforgettable Texas drawl, he was just a young man trying to figure out who he was and what he was supposed to become. And the most interesting part of his story isn't that he became a Hollywood star. It's that, at one point, he had to risk losing everything he had already built just to become the person he wanted to be. Matthew McConaughey was born on November 4, 1969, in Uvalde, Texas. He grew up in a family where discipline, confidence, and hard work mattered. His father, Jim, was a former professional football player and a strong personality. His mother, Kay, was a teacher. Matthew grew up with a certain toughness around him. But he also had something else. A natural ability to connect with people. He attended the University of Texas at Austin, where he originally considered becoming a lawyer. But life had other plans. One day, he met casting director Don Phillips at an Austin hotel. That meeting would change everything. Matthew eventually landed a small role in the 1993 film My Boyfriend's Back. Then came the movie that truly introduced him to Hollywood, Dazed and Confused. He played David Wooderson, a laid-back character with a memorable personality. His screen time wasn't enormous. But people noticed him. Hollywood noticed him. Suddenly, Matthew McConaughey was becoming a name. And then came the romantic comedies. The Wedding Planner. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Failure to Launch. He became the charming leading man Hollywood loved. He was handsome, funny, relaxed, charismatic. Studios knew exactly what they wanted from him. And Matthew knew how to give it to them. But there was a problem. The more successful he became, the more he started feeling trapped. He was making money. He was famous. He was getting the kind of opportunities most actors dream about. But deep inside, he knew something was missing. He didn't want to spend the rest of his career playing the same version of himself. So he made a dangerous decision. He started saying no. And not to bad movies. He said no to movies that offered him huge paychecks. For a while, Hollywood didn't understand it. Why would an actor turn down millions of dollars? Why would someone walk away from the role that made him famous? Because Matthew wasn't trying to become richer. He was trying to become better. He wanted people to stop seeing him as just the charming romantic comedy guy. And that decision came with consequences. The offers slowed down. The phone stopped ringing as often. There was uncertainty. Imagine having everything you've worked for and then voluntarily stepping away from it. That's what Matthew did. He took the risk. And slowly, the gamble began to pay off. He started taking darker, more challenging roles. Then came The Lincoln Lawyer. Matthew played Mickey Haller, a morally complicated defense attorney. It was different. People began to see another side of him. Then came Mud. Then Killer Joe. And eventually, the role that changed his career forever. Dallas Buyers Club. Matthew played Ron Woodruff, a Texas electrician diagnosed with AIDS who fights to survive and help others gain access to treatment. The role demanded an enormous physical and emotional transformation. He lost a significant amount of weight for the character. But the transformation wasn't just physical. He disappeared into the role. And suddenly, the actor Hollywood had once treated as a romantic comedy star was being talked about as a serious dramatic performer. In 2014, Matthew McConaughey won the Academy Award for Best Actor. But the Oscar wasn't really the beginning of his transformation. It was the reward for years of uncertainty. Years of rejection. Years of saying no. Years of wondering whether his decision was destroying his career. And then came True Detective. His performance as Rust Cole showed audiences just how far he could go. Dark, philosophical, broken, intense. It became one of the defining performances of his career. This period became known as the McConaughey. But behind all the success was something much more human. Matthew wasn't perfect. He had struggles. He had doubts. He made mistakes. He experienced moments when life didn't go according to plan. But perhaps that's exactly why people connected with him. He never presented himself as someone who had everything figured out. Instead, he talked about living with purpose. About gratitude. About responsibility. About becoming the best version of yourself. And eventually, his life expanded beyond acting. He became a husband and father. He married Camila Alves, and together they built a family. He also became involved in philanthropy and created the Just Keep Livin' Foundation, inspired by the philosophy he wanted young people to embrace: staying active, making healthy choices, and living with purpose. Matthew's story isn't really about Hollywood. It's about courage. Because sometimes success can become its own prison. Sometimes the hardest decision isn't climbing higher. Sometimes it's walking away from what everyone else thinks you should want. Matthew McConaughey could have stayed comfortable. He could have kept making the same movies. He could have collected the checks. He could have played the same charming character again and again. But he didn't. He chose uncertainty over comfort, purpose over approval, and eventually, that decision changed everything. That's what makes his journey so powerful. Because most people don't have the courage to risk losing what they already have. They stay in the job they hate. They stay in situations that make them unhappy. They follow the path other people chose for them. Matthew McConaughey's story reminds us that sometimes you have to step into the unknown to discover what you're truly capable of. The world may tell you who you are. Hollywood may put you in a box. People may decide what your future should look like. But you still have a choice. You can stay where you're comfortable. Or you can take the risk. Matthew took the risk. And somewhere between the uncertainty, the failures, the rejection, and the long road back, he discovered something far more valuable than fame. He discovered himself. And maybe that's the real lesson of his story. You don't always need to become someone completely different. Sometimes, you just need the courage to finally become who you were meant to be. And when the world tells you to stay in the box it built for you, maybe that's exactly when you should break out. Because sometimes, the greatest chapter of your life begins the moment you stop living the story everyone else wrote for you.